All right. Chapter 32, night of December 7th, 1900. For 70 minutes, a fountain of light played upon the planet Mars. Professor Pickering, absolutely inexplicable. It may have been a geyser of messages. It may be translated someday. If it were expressed in imaginary imagery befitting the salutation by a planet to its dominant, it may be known someday as the most heroic oration in the literature of this geosystem. See Lowell's account in Popular Astronomy 10-187. Here are published several of the values in a possible code of long flashes and short flashes. Lau takes a supposed normal T for unity and records variations of 2/3, 1 and 1/3, and 1 1/2. If there be, at Flagstaff, Arizona, records of all the long flashes and short flashes that were seen for 70 minutes upon this night, December 7th, 1900, it is either that the greetings of an island of space have been hopelessly addressed to a continental stolidity, or there will have to be the descent upon Flagstaff, Arizona, by all the amateur Chapolians of this earth to concentrate in one deafening buzz of attempted translation. It was at this time that Tesla announced that he had received upon his wireless apparatus vibrations that he attributed to the Martians. They were series of triplets. It is our expression that during eclipses and oppositions and other notable celestial events, lunarians try to communicate with this earth, having a notion that at such times the astronomers of this earth may be more nearly alert. An eclipse of the moon, March 10th and 11th, 1895. Not a cloud, no mist, electric flashes like lightning reported from a ship upon the Atlantic. During the eclipse of the sun, July 29th, 1897, a strange image was taken on a sensitive plate by Mr. L.E. Martindale of St. Mary's, Ohio. It looks like a record of knotted lightning. See photography, May 26, 1898, in the Bullsock Astro de France, 17-205, 315, and 447. It is said that upon the 1st and the 3rd of March 1903, a light like a little star flashing intermittently was seen by M. Ray in Marcellus and by Maurice Guérin in London in the lunar crater Aristarchus. March 28, 1903, opposition of Mars. In Cosmos, NS 49-259, M. Desmoulins writes from Argenteuil that upon August 9, 1903 at 11 p.m., moving from north to south, he saw a luminous object. The planet Venus was at primary greatest brilliance upon August 13th, 1903. In three respects, it was like other objects that have been observed upon this earth at times of the nearest approach of Venus. It was a red object. It appeared only in a local sky, and it appeared in the time of the visibility of Venus. With M. Desmoulins were 4 persons, one of whom had field glasses. The object was watched 20 minutes, during which time it traveled a distance estimated at 5 or 6 kilometers. It looked like a light suspended from a balloon, but through glasses, no outline of a balloon could be seen, and there were no reflections of light as if from the opaque body of a balloon. It was a red body with greatest luminosity in its nucleus. The editor of Cosmos writes that according to other correspondents, this object had been seen at 11 p.m., July 19th and 26th at Chateau. Argenteuil and Chateau are 4 or 5 miles apart, and both are about 5 miles from Paris. All 3 of these dates were Sundays, and even though nothing like a balloon had been seen through glasses, one naturally supposes that somebody near Paris had been amusing himself sending up fire balloons Sunday evenings. The one great resistance to all that is known as progress is what one naturally supposes. The one great resistance to all that is known as progress is what one naturally supposes. In the English Mechanic 81-220, Arthur Mee writes that several persons in the neighborhood of Cardiff had, upon the night of March 29th, 1905, seen in the sky, an appearance like a vertical beam of light, which was not due, they say, to a searchlight or any such cause. There were other observations, and they remind us of the observations by Noble and Bradgate. August 28th, 29th, 1883. Then upon an object that cast a light like a searchlight, this time an association between a light like a searchlight and a luminosity of definite form. In the Cambrian Natural Observer 1905-32 are several accounts of a more definite looking appearance that was seen this night in the sky of Wales. Like a long cluster of stars obscured by a thin film or mist, it was seen at the time of the visibility of Venus, then an evening star, about 10 p.m. It grew brighter and for about half an hour looked like an incandescent light. It was a conspicuous and definite object according to another description, like an iron bar heated to an orange-colored glow and suspended vertically. 3 nights later, something appeared in the sky of Cherbourg, France. Cherbourg, the thing that appeared night after night in the sky of the city of Cherbourg at a time when the planet Venus was nearest. Inferior conjunction, April 26, 1905. Flammarion, in the Bullsock Astro de France, 19-243, says that this object was the planet Venus. He therefore denies that it had moved in various directions, saying that the supposed observations to this effect were illusions. In L'Illustration, April 22nd, 1905, he tells the story in his own way and says some things that we're not disposed to agree with. We're not disposed to agree with, but also he says that the ignorance of some persons inenarrable. God, what is that sentence? I got to do it again. April 22nd, 1905. He tells the story in his own way and says some things that we are not disposed to agree with, but also he says that the ignorance of some persons innumerable. Okay. In Cosmos, NS 42-420, months after the occurrence, it is said that many correspondents had written to inquire as to Cherbourg. The editor gives his opinion that the object was either Jupiter or Venus. Throughout our Venus visitor expression, the most important point is appearance in a local sky. That unifies this expression with other expressions, all of them converging into our general extrageographic acceptances. The editor of Cosmos says that this object, which was reported from Cherbourg, was reported from other towns as well. He probably means to say that it was seen simultaneously in different towns. For all guardians of this Earth's isolation, this is a convenient thing to say. The conclusion then is that the planet Venus, exceptionally bright, was attracting unusual attention generally, and that there was nothing in the especial sky of Cherbourg. But we have learned that standardizing disguisements often obscure our data in later accounts, and we have formed the habit of going to contemporaneous sources. We shall find that the newspapers of the time reported a luminous object that appeared night after night only over the city of Cherbourg, as the name by which it was known indicates. It was a reddish object. The editor of Cosmos explains that atmospheric conditions could give this coloration to Venus. I suppose this could be so occasionally, not night after night, I should say. We shall find that this object or a similar object was reported from other places, but not simultaneously with its appearance over Cherbourg. In the journal Des Débats, the first news is in the issue of April 4th, 1905. It is said that a luminous body was appearing every evening between 8 and 10 o'clock over the city of Cherbourg. These were about the hours of the visibility of Venus. In this period, Venus set at 9:30 p.m. and Jupiter at 8 p.m. It is enough to make any conventionalist feel most reasonable, though he'd feel that anyway, in thinking that, of course, then the object was Venus. In my own earlier speculations upon this subject, this one datum stood out so that had it not been for other data, I'd have abandoned the subject. But then I read of other occurrences time after time. Has something been seen in a local sky of this earth, sometimes so definitely seen to move, not like Venus, but in various directions, that one has to think that it was not Venus, though appearing at the time of visibility of Venus. Between these appearances and visibility of Venus, there does seem to be relation. In the journal, it is said that Cherbourg had an apparent diameter of 15 centimeters and a less definite margin of 75 centimeters. Margin of seemed to be about a yard wide, meaningless, of course. In the Bullsock Astro de France, it is said that, according to reports, its form was oval. In the journal Des Debats, we are told that at first the thing was supposed to be a captive balloon, but that this idea was given up because it appeared and disappeared. Journal Des Debats, April 12th, that every evening the luminous object was continuing to appear above Cherbourg, that many explanations had been thought of by some persons that it was the planet Jupiter, and by others that it was a comet, but that no one knew what it was. The comet explanation is, of course, ruled out. The writer in the journal expresses regret that neither the Meteorological Bureau nor the Observatory of Paris had sent anybody to investigate, but says that the Prefet Maritime of Cherbourg had commissioned a naval officer to investigate. In Le Temps of the 12th is published an interview with Flammarion, who complains some more against general inarrableness. Inarrableness, and says that, of course, the object was Venus. The writer in Le Temps says that soon would the matter be settled, because the commander of a warship had undertaken to decide what the luminous body was. Le Figaro, April 13th, the reporter of Commander de Carreras of the Chassaloop La Butte, that the position of Cherbourg was not the position of Venus, and that the disk did not look like the crescentic disk of Venus, but that the observation had been made from a vessel under unfavorable conditions, and that the commander and his colleagues did not offer a final option. I think that there was inarrableness all around. Given visibility, I can't think what the unfavorable conditions could have been. Given, however, observations upon something that all the astronomers in the world would say could not be, one does think of the dislike of a naval officer who, though he probably knew right ascension from declination, was himself no astronomer, to commit himself. In Le Temps and other newspapers published in Paris, it is said that, according to the naval officers, the object might have been a comet, but that they would not positively commit themselves to this opinion either. I think that somebody should be brave, so though not positively, of course, I incline myself to relate these appearances over Cherbourg with the observations in Wales upon March 29th. Also, I suggest that there is another report that may relate. In Le Temps, April 12th, it is said that at midnight, April 9th and 10th, a luminous body like Cherbourg was seen in the sky of Tunis. Though it was visible several minutes, it is said that this object was probably a meteor. Every night, from the 1st to the 11th of April, a luminous body appeared in the sky at Cherbourg. Then it was seen no longer. It may have been seen sailing away upon its final departure from the sky of Cherbourg. In Le Figaro, April 15th, it is said that upon the night of the 11th of April, the guards of La Blanque lighthouse had seen something like a light balloon in the sky. Supposing it was a balloon, they had started to signal to it, but it had disappeared. It is said that the lighthouse had been out of communication with the mainland, and that the guards had not heard of Cherbourg. In the London Times, November 23rd, 1905, a correspondent writes that at East Liss Hunts, which is about 40 miles from Reading, he and his gamekeeper had, at 3:30 p.m. November 17th, heard a loud, distant rumbling. According to this hearer, the rumbling seemed to be a composition of triplets of sounds. We shall accept that 3 sounds were heard, but we have no other assertion that each sound was itself so sub-serialized. This correspondence gamekeeper said that he had heard similar sounds at 11:30 a.m. and at 1:30 p.m. It is said that the sounds were not like gunfire and that the direction from which they seemed to come and the time in the afternoon precluded the explanation of artillery practice at Aldershot or Portsmouth. Aldershot is about 15 miles from East Liss and Portsmouth about 20. Times, November 24th. That the quake had been distinctly felt in Reading about 3:30 p.m. November 17th. Times, November 25th. Heard at Reading at 11:30, 1:30, and 3:30 o'clock, November 17th. Reading Standard, November 25th. The consternation had been caused in Reading upon the 17th by sounds and vibrations of the earth about 11:30 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 3:30 p.m. It is said that nothing had been seen, but that the sounds closely resembled those that had been heard during the meteoric shower of 1866. Mr. H.G. Fordham appears again. In the Times, December 1st, he writes that the phenomena pointed clearly to an explosion in the sky and not to an earthquake of subterranean origin. The noise and shock experienced are no doubt attributable to the explosion or to more than one explosion of a meteorite or bolide high up in the atmosphere and setting up a wave or waves of sound and aerial shock. It's probable, indeed, that a good many phenomena having this source are wrongly ascribed to slight and local earthshock. Mr. Fordham wrote this, but he wrote no more, and I think that somewhere else something else was written, and that in the year 1905 it had to be obeyed, and that it may be interpreted in those words, "Thou shalt not." Mr. Fordham did not inquire into the reasonableness of thinking that only by coincidence meteors so successfully exploded in a period of 4 hours in one local sky of this earth and nowhere else, and into the inference then as to whether this earth is stationary or not. We have data of a succession occupying far more than 4 hours. In the Times, Mr. Lane of Petersfield, 20 miles from Portsmouth, writes that at 11:30 a.m. and at 3:30 p.m., several days before the 17th, she had heard... Hold on. Mrs. Lane. I thought it said Mr. No, it said Mrs. I'm sorry. Mrs. Lane thinks that there must have been artillery practice at Portsmouth. It seems clear that there was no cannoning anywhere in England at this time. It seems clear that there was signaling from some other world. In the English Mechanic 82-433, Joseph Clark writes that a few minutes past 3 p.m. upon the 18th, a triplet of detonations was heard at Somerset, as loud as thunder, but not exactly like thunder. Reading Observer, November 25th, that, according to the correspondent, the sounds that have been heard again at Whitechurch, 20 miles from Reading, upon the 21st, at 1:35 p.m. and 3:08 p.m., the sounds had been attributed to artillery practice at Aldershot, but the correspondent had written to the artillery commandment at Bulford Camp and had received word that there had been no heavy firing at the times of his inquiry. The editor of the Observer says that he too had written to the commandment and had received the same answer. I have searched widely. I have found record of nobody's supposition that he had traced these detonations to the origin upon this earth.